Today I'm going to tell you a way to find out a fair price for vintage audio equipment, as well as what you're getting into if you catch the vintage bug. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy vintage audio equipment, you've come to the right spot. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell, as well as giving me a big thumbs up if you like this video, and share it with others. I'd like to talk to you today about how to figure out what you should pay for a piece of vintage stereo equipment. I see so many YouTube videos, I see articles, I see a lot of information on it, and really a lot of disinformation about it. I'm a repairer and restorer of the equipment, but I'm also a collector, so I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a music lover, I'm an audiophile, I'm a technician, I'm kind of all of them piled in one. But I find just so much disinformation from people talking about vintage audio equipment and what you should pay and what you should look for. First of all, in my experience, they're all broken to some extent. It doesn't matter that they come on and you've got sound out of two channels, and I think that's, you know, something that a lot of people don't understand. 30, 40, and 50-year-old electronics, they all have some issues. May not be serious issues, but there are issues. And I'm going to harp on this right now, as I do in many of my videos, talking about electrolytic capacitors. And there is no doubt they need to be replaced in 30, 40, 50-year-old pieces of electronics. Not just vintage stereo equipment, any electronics. And it's not me saying that, it's the manufacturers. So please Google electrolytic capacitor life expectancy, and you're going to find every manufacturer that their components are in the vintage stereo equipment talking about that their capacitors, they figure in most cases 15 to 20 years, they start to fail. They do. This is from the people who design it, test it, validate it, and manufacture it. And these are companies like Nishinikon, Panasonic, Elna. You know, the same companies are still around that were around back in, you know, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and made capacitors for the equipment that you have. So that I'd like to get off my chest. Is that's why I say they're all broke in some manner. Doesn't mean the capacitor, you know, people will say, well, I checked them all. If you checked them all, you could replace them all as quick as you checked them all. And, well, they're not bulging. You know, I didn't see any leaking. That's not how they all fail. And it's not me saying this. You know, I get a little bit worked up about it because it's so clear that they start to fail. They get out of spec. Your audio's not going to be as good. Maybe at some point, these ones that are out of spec will blow up, or something bad will happen. I've had several that did literally blow up. I've had many that were leaking and many that were bulging, but most of them are none of those. They just don't work as well as they used to when they were new. The day they were manufactured, their life was limited. It's just how it is, and it's not me saying that, it's the people who make the product. So please research that first. So how do you price, you know, this equipment? How do you price it then? Well, I think a big part is, you know, people nowadays, everybody's on the internet. 15 years ago, nobody knew what nothing was worth. And what does everybody do? So they get their uncle's old receiver and they go to eBay and they type in whatever it is. And all of a sudden they see a listing that says their uncle's receiver, it's going for $1,000. And they stop right there. Let me tell you right up front, the way to look, eBay is a great resource to go look at. I think that's where you should go look for the prices of this stuff. But you've got to check that sold box. It's down on the left-hand side. Scroll down with your mouse or page down and click the box sold. And then that's going to tell you the items that actually sold, right? I could put $50 on the socks I'm wearing right now. Doesn't mean they're going to sell, right? So that's the thing you got to realize, that you know, what somebody's asking is not what somebody's getting. So for an example, a little while ago, I just did a Pioneer SX 1050. Right? I mean, a very nice Pioneer receiver, not their biggest, of course, not their smallest. And I hit the sold button, and they went from anywhere from $400, a non-working unit, up to about $1,100. And now you unclick that sold button, and the ones that are left there are $1,500, $1,700, $1,400, $1,200, right? All these higher numbers. So I think that the first thing you need to do, and this works for Craigslist too. This is a great tool for Craigslist. You see something on Craigslist. Let's say you see that Pioneer SX 1050. You go into eBay and see what they sold for. And so many times on my local Craigslist, somebody's just gotten on eBay and looked at a listing, and they pick that one because it's a big number. So if it's $1,000, it must be worth 1,000, and that's just the furthest thing from reality. You know, I mean, it's what they're selling for, not what you're asking for something. So another thing I'll say about purchasing vintage, if you're going to get into it, see, I repair my own stuff. There are no units that's going to run you more than a couple $100 in parts, even if you do a full restore. Do a Pioneer SX 1980, even with the filter caps, and the filter caps will be about half the price of all the components. It's really not the parts that are expensive, it's the labor. So if you can do your own work, it's almost as inexpensive to do a 1980 as it is a lesser Pioneer receiver. Almost the same amount of work. You know, I mean, you know, you still got to take it apart and change those components, get it back together. Maybe a little more complex, but nothing that's going to, you know, cause a whole lot extra of cost. So and as I said, the filter capacitors are the only thing that are expensive. And then speaking of parts, they're all available. All the parts. Now, that means the capacitors, the transistors, the resistors, the diodes, all that stuff you can still get for vintage stuff. The problem is maybe if you have a transformer go, that's going to be a little more of a problem, or cosmetic issues. All your knobs are missing. That's a bigger problem than having some sort of an electrical issue, trying to run down knobs, because nobody wants to give up their knobs on their good unit, right? And you can't call Pioneer anymore to get them. So I think the point is, if you're going to get into vintage and you can repair it yourself, like myself, I get the littler units, the less expensive ones. I don't mind picking up a unit for 50 or $100 and putting that much in it to bring it up to snuff. But if I were having to have somebody repair that properly, it's going to cost way more than the unit's worth. So the only time I would do that is, you know, maybe it was handed down to you by your dad or something, or it has some sentimental value. You went to college with it and you want to keep it going, and you don't care if it costs more than it's worth. So if you're looking for vintage equipment, you know, it's going to cost you as much to get the expensive stuff fixed as the cheap stuff. So, you know, unless you're willing to do that, you probably would just stay away from the cheaper stuff, because, you know, you're going to take it to somebody competent and you're going to say, well, I spent $100 on it. You should be able to get it going for what, 20? No. It's just not how it works. Have a plumber come to your home, have an electrician. I'm talking about anybody competent. Now, if you got a buddy and you're going to pay him a 6-pack and see what happens, that's something different. But, you know, working on these units take a lot of hours. You know, somebody's not going to just fix it up for you in 10 minutes. So it's going to cost you some money. So if you're buying the more expensive units, what's the big deal? Let's say you do get a we're talking about Pioneer, why not stay with them, right? You get a 1980 and they're expensive, right? Even barn finds, totally trashed ones are a big buck. So you think, well, if I got to put $500, $600, $700 in it, so what, right? It's worth it. But if you get a barn find, you know, a lesser Pioneer, and you go onto eBay and you hit sold, they're going for 100, 125, 150. You know, you're going to put 500 in it? Probably not. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and really the best thing to do is to go to eBay, hit sold. It's a great, I mean, people hate eBay. I don't know exactly why, because I guess they think everything that's said is how it is. You know, I mean, person says it's serviced, works great. Does it? Unlikely. Now, there are some good eBay sellers on there, and that's another thing about eBay that I'll give them, is if you get on there and there's somebody selling vintage audio equipment, and they've been on there for years, and they've sold a lot of different pieces, and they've got great feedback, you're safe. But guess what? You're not getting that one cheap, right? That's going to be on the high end of what these things are selling for. Somebody went in there and restored, let's say, again, talking about a Pioneer, you know, SS 1050, might cost you $1,200. A broken one might cost you $400. Why is that? Well, because somebody's going to have to go fix that broken one, right, and bring it up to snuff. So you got to make that decision. You know, are you going to spend the money on it or not? And there's nothing wrong with just picking one up anyway. $100, $200. What do you got to lose, right? If you know, you want to take it home and try it, you can do that too. But really, the big thing is click that sold button on eBay. You know, do a search on eBay. Say Pioneer space SX 1050, and then click that sold button and see what this stuff's going for. And then when you go over and look at that SX 1050 locally off Craigslist and the guy's asking $1,000 and it don't work, you can tell them, well, you know, what they're asking on eBay is not what they're selling for. Here's a broken one for $400. It'll help you negotiate a deal maybe with them. So anyway, I hope this helped you a little bit. The problem I have with a lot of the videos out there about this subject is they don't talk nothing about the electrolytic capacitors, you know, and their limited life. You know, they don't. They make it sound like, well, if you buy it from your uncle and he took care of it, you know, that's the best deal. Where do you get that from? It's no better than if your uncle had it in a closet with a blanket on it. You know, as soon as that unit was manufactured, it started decaying. And now I'm getting so many more emails than I did 5 or 10 years ago about units failing. These things are not repairing themselves. They're just not. More and more failing. And I'm guessing in another 5 to 10, I hate to say it, but they're all going to fail. You know, if they haven't had their electrolytic capacitors changed out, they're all going to fail. And the funny thing is probably most of these people, they think they failed because now it's in protection. Right now they've lost their left channel, whatever the issue is, but it had been deteriorating for decades. Just something finally went that made them feel that, gee, something really went wrong, but something was probably something was wrong probably long before that. So I hope I helped you, you know, try to price this stuff out a little bit better, and also what you're getting into. You know, don't expect to buy something at the flea market and just have it work right. And if you got to find somebody to work on it, it's going to cost you a few bucks. It just is. So it's something to consider when you're getting into vintage stereo equipment. So thanks a lot again for watching, and I hope you all have a good day.